This is the stare at your phone screen, the message marked seen for hours, the sudden emptiness flooding a space she filled completely just days ago. You know that feeling, the dull pressure in your chest, the loop of thoughts spinning endlessly, the almost uncontrollable urge to do something, anything, to shatter the wall of silence. But here's what almost no one tells you. She isn't watching what you do. She's watching what you are. When a woman goes quiet and ignores you, she isn't testing your patience. She's probing your foundation. She wants to see what happens when she pulls her attention away like flipping off a switch. Do you plunge into darkness or do you keep glowing with your own light? The unspoken, brutal question she's asking is crystal clear. Is this man rooted in himself or does he need me to exist? Your reaction to her silence is the answer, and you deliver it not with words, but with your energy, your behavior, the way you occupy the empty space she just left behind. The vast majority of men fail this test, not because they lack affection, but because they confuse love with dependence. They fire off a second message, then a third. They rephrase the first one, hoping a slightly different version will finally trigger a reply. They spiral into the maze of their own questions. Did I say something wrong? Has she met someone else? Am I losing her? Until they no longer recognize who they were before she walked into their life. And that's exactly when everything flips. Not because she ignored them, but because her silence exposed something they refused to see. They had built their entire emotional existence around her approval. What you're about to hear in this video runs completely counter to every reflex society drilled into you about relationships. You were taught that persistence is a virtue, that love proves itself through effort, that the one who walks away loses. But in the raw mechanics of emotion and attraction, those rules are turned upside down. The man who stops chasing doesn't lose, he wins. The man who stays silent doesn't surrender, he commands. You will learn how to decode what her silence truly means and what it exposes about the structure of your connection. You will see exactly why every extra message you send chips away at the attraction she once felt. You will discover how to turn your own calm into a magnetic force that naturally draws her back. And above all, you will understand that the final lesson was never about her. It has always been about you. Welcome to Relationship Psychology. Before we dive in, if this is hitting deep, smash that subscribe button and drop a comment below saying, I'm subscribed, so I know you're in this with me. Let's go. When a woman stops replying, your first instinct screams that there's a problem to fix. You hunt for the cause, dissect your last exchanges, try to pinpoint the exact moment things went off track. But that whole approach rests on a false premise. The belief that her silence is a direct consequence of something you did. The reality is far more subtle. In most cases, her silence isn't a reaction to one specific event. It's a deliberate evaluation. She isn't punishing you for a mistake. She's observing you under emotional pressure to see what you reveal about yourself. Female silence acts like a double-sided mirror. On one side, it lets her measure your emotional response without the filter of words. On the other, it forces you to confront yourself in the absence of her presence. What you do in that empty space tells her everything about your level of inner mastery. A woman isn't looking for a perfect man. She's looking for a stable one. The difference is massive. Perfection is a performance. Stability is a foundation. What she truly wants to know is whether you have a foundation of your own, whether you remain the same man with the same inner peace, whether she's there or gone. If her silence unravels you to the point of frantic action, she has her answer. You have no foundation. You were built on her. But something fascinating happens when you stay completely still in the face of her silence. Her mind slips into what psychologists call cognitive dissonance. She gets caught between two conflicting realities. Her ego insists you should chase, should prove how much she matters. But her emotions start whispering something else. Why isn't he reacting? What does this mean? Did I overestimate him? That inner contradiction plants a powerful seed, curiosity. And in the realm of attraction, curiosity is a seed that grows on its own. She starts checking your stories. She rereads old messages looking for clues. She wonders whether her silence actually produced the effect she expected. The longer you hold your calm, the more that curiosity feeds itself. The mistake most men make is treating her silence like a war to win or an argument to resolve. But it's neither. It's a revelation. It reveals the true power balance in your connection. And if you can listen to it, it gives you every piece of information you need to understand where things really stand. The man who grasps this dynamic doesn't react. He observes. He registers. And in that calm observation, he naturally reclaims emotional leadership, not by forcing anything, but by refusing to surrender his center of gravity to the uncertainty of her silence. There is a paradox at the heart of attraction that very few men truly understand. The harder you try to hold someone, the farther they drift. This isn't random cruelty of human nature. It's a deep emotional mechanic wired into how attraction actually works. When a woman starts pulling away and you chase, you aren't showing her love. You're showing her fear. Fear of losing her. Fear of not being enough. Fear that without her your life loses coherence. And fear, no matter how genuine it feels, has never been and will never be attractive. Attraction doesn't feed on availability. It feeds on mystery. A woman is drawn to what she cannot fully predict, what she doesn't completely control, what leaves her room to desire, to imagine, to feel. The instant you start chasing, you erase that mystery. You become predictable, and predictability kills feminine imagination as surely as light kills shadows. Here's an even harder truth to swallow. When you chase a woman who's withdrawing, you don't just lose attractiveness, you communicate something devastating about how you see yourself. You tell her you lack enough confidence in your own value to let someone choose whether to stay or leave. You tell her your self-worth hinges on her approval, and no one truly respects someone whose self-respect is conditional. Think about the opposite dynamic. The man who left the deepest mark on your life, the one you admired, the one you wanted to become. Was he the one begging for attention, constantly explaining himself, seeking everyone's approval? Or was he the one moving forward with quiet certainty, knowing exactly who he was and where he was headed, regardless of what others thought? The answer is obvious, and it applies exactly the same way in romantic attraction. The man who stops chasing doesn't shut down emotionally. He doesn't turn cold or indifferent. He does something far more powerful. He redirects his energy back to himself. He picks up the thread of his own life, his projects, his ambitions, his personal growth, and lets that inner momentum speak for him. And when a woman feels that withdrawal, when she realizes your world no longer orbits waiting for her reply, something unexpected happens. She starts to feel your absence, not as painful emptiness, but as an emotional distance she can't quite name. What you used to be, present, attentive, invested, is gone. And the absence of something once taken for granted always speaks louder than its presence ever could. That's when the balance begins to shift, not because you played a game, but because you simply chose to stop playing hers. There is a skill society never teaches you because it runs directly against everything the attention culture has conditioned us to believe. That skill is the ability to remain calm in uncertainty, to tolerate the discomfort of silence without compulsively filling it, to refuse to react every time your nervous system screams alarm. This skill has a name: emotional mastery. And in the domain of attraction, it is the most magnetic force a man can develop. Here's what most men never realize. Women don't primarily read what you say. They read your energy. They pick up how you behave under pressure. They sense whether you're rooted in yourself or whether you're reaching for external support to stay stable. This sensitivity isn't manipulation. It's intuition, and it's shockingly accurate. When you stay silent and steady in the face of her silence, you send a message that penetrates far deeper than any carefully worded text ever could. That message says, "My peace is not for sale. My inner balance does not depend on your reply. I am a man who exists fully with or without your attention." That signal is rare, and anything rare commands attention. Emotional mastery does not mean erasing your feelings. It isn't armor you wear to feel nothing. It's the exact opposite. It's the capacity to feel everything and still choose how you respond. That's the difference between reacting and choosing, between being ruled by your emotions and ruling them. When you resist the urge to send that second message, it isn't misplaced pride. It's concrete proof that you can lead yourself. And a man who can lead himself naturally inspires respect, especially from the woman who was watching to see if you would collapse. There's a fascinating psychological phenomenon that occurs when a man stays calm in a situation where everyone expects him to scramble. The other person, who thought she controlled the dynamic through her silence, suddenly finds herself in uncertainty. She expected a predictable reaction. You gave her none. And that lack of predictability creates a gravitational pull of attraction. She starts thinking about you, wondering what you feel, trying to decode your calm. Silence wielded with awareness isn't emptiness, it's presence. It makes your existence felt even in your absence, and that distant presence is infinitely more powerful than any attempt to remind her of you with words. There comes a moment in every dynamic when a man decides to stop chasing, and something quiet yet profound begins to unfold in the mind of the woman who ignored him. The moment doesn't announce itself loudly. It arrives silently, often in the middle of an ordinary night or a random day when distractions fade for a second. She picks up her phone and your name isn't there. No message, no view on her stories, no little signal reminding her you're waiting. And in that void, something she misjudged starts to weigh on her. It isn't your physical absence she misses first. It's the feeling, the warmth of knowing she was desired, the comfortable certainty of being seen. When you were there, attentive, invested, that certainty was so constant it became invisible, like the air we breathe without noticing. Only when the air thins do we remember its value. You don't need to build a facade. You don't need to post signs of your new life, flashing joy and busyness to prove you've moved on. True detachment doesn't perform. It's felt. And when it's authentic, it cuts through screens, distance, silence, with a precision no calculated strategy can match. What teaches her the weight of your absence is the contrast between the man who was there, present, warm, attentive, and the man who is no longer there, not out of anger, but out of calm, deliberate choice. That contrast rises slowly like a tide, and when it reaches its height, it reveals something she didn't anticipate: regret. Not regret over a poorly handled argument, the regret of having taken for granted something that wasn't guaranteed, the regret of mistaking a man's availability for his necessity. That regret doesn't come from your words, it comes from your silence, and that's exactly what gives it depth. You didn't argue, you didn't beg, you simply let reality speak in your place. The stoic man doesn't aim to hurt, he simply aims to be true. And being true in this context means refusing to sacrifice his peace to maintain an imbalanced connection. It's a form of self-respect first, and paradoxically, respect for her too, because by not folding, he offers her a truth no words could have delivered so clearly. That moment always arrives. It's rarely dramatic. It doesn't look like a movie scene where everything suddenly clicks in an emotional explosion. It sneaks in during an ordinary instant, mid-conversation with someone else, scrolling late at night, sitting in a silence she no longer knows how to fill. It's the moment she stops telling herself stories, when her pride finally quiets long enough for her deeper thoughts to speak. And in that inner calm, the reality of what she did, what she let slip away, starts taking shape. What she misses isn't what she thought she would miss. It isn't the dates, the messages, or even your physical presence. What she misses is a way of feeling, that quiet certainty she felt around you, the security of being with a man who didn't need to prove anything, who truly listened, who stayed patient when everything around him was frantic. She now realizes she mistook that stability for weakness. She read it as docility, as proof she could test without consequence. She didn't yet understand that real strength doesn't shout, it doesn't defend, it doesn't need demonstration. It simply exists, serene and unshakable, and it's felt through every decision, every silence, every refusal to bend under pressure. Now, comparing your calm to the frenzy of men who chase her, she sees the difference with new clarity. Those who bombard her with messages, who try to please, who adjust their behavior to her reactions, they unwittingly reveal how much they depend on her approval. And that dependence, however flattering on the surface, doesn't generate admiration. It generates power, but a shallow power that always ends up boring her. You didn't do that. You stayed yourself. And that loyalty to self, which she may have misread at the time, now appears for what it truly was: dignity. The regret she feels doesn't always lead to action. She may never call, she may never send that message. But the regret exists. It settles in, It colors how she views the men who come after you. It teaches her something she hadn't yet learned, the value of a man who remained himself when everything invited him to lose himself. And that silent lesson, carried by your absence and your calm, will stay with her far longer than any argument, any reproach, any desperate attempt to make her see what she was losing. Everything we've covered, the psychology of her silence, the mechanics of chasing, the power of detachment, the rebuilding of respect, the moment of regret, converges on one central truth. And it has nothing to do with her. It has everything to do with you. Her silence was only a trigger, a revealer, a pressure applied to your foundation to see if it held. What it exposed was the relationship you had with your own worth. Was it unconditional, or did it depend on someone else's validation? That is the real lesson, the one most men never receive because they're too busy figuring out how to win back the woman ignoring them to notice what the situation is teaching them. Every time a woman tests you with silence, she unwittingly hands you an opportunity, the chance to discover where you truly stand with yourself. Is your peace real, or was it only comfortable when everything was smooth? Is your confidence built on something solid inside you, or was it merely the reflection of her gaze? The stoic man answers those questions without lying to himself. And what he does with those answers, not in words, but in action, in discipline, in daily choice, is what transforms him. Not for her, for himself. He understands that rejection in any form isn't humiliation, it's purification. It burns away what was fragile, so only what is solid remains. And what survives the fire, discipline, consistency, inner peace, is the man he was always meant to become. The final lesson the Stoic man teaches himself is both simple and radical. Your value is not a variable. It doesn't rise when you're desired and fall when you're ignored. It remains constant because it's rooted in who you are, not in what others think of you. Love deeply, yes. Be present, generous, attentive. But never confuse connection with dependence. Give your energy freely to those who cherish it. And when someone chooses to neglect it, withdraw it calmly, not as punishment, but as alignment. Because here's what you learn over time and with practice. The absence of a disciplined man, a centered man, a man who chooses his peace over validation, that absence carries a weight words can never match. It resonates, it lingers, it teaches. And when the next silence comes, because it will, you won't be afraid anymore. You won't panic. You won't chase. You'll observe, calm and rooted, what that silence reveals. And you'll respond not with words, but with your stable, unshakable inner presence. That is what it means to master silence. Not a man who feels nothing, but a man whose peace has become a signature no silence, no distance, no rejection can erase. If you made it this far, you're already ready to move beyond knee-jerk reactions, beyond automatic fear-driven moves. And that alone is the beginning of real transformation. If you want the full roadmap, concrete tools, in-depth strategies, and step-by-step guidance to master attraction and emotional strength, check out the complete online course linked in the description. It's available in French, English, and Spanish, and it's built for men who've decided their relational life deserves as much investment as any other area of their existence. See you in there. Yeah, if this resonated, subscribe now and let me know in the comments what part hit you the hardest.